The Mughals were known for their combat powers after all. They did conquer one of the most fertile regions on the planet and created an empire from a diverse group of communities. Yet, even the mighty Mughals were sometimes hard-pressed against brilliant opponents. Rana Pratap was one such opponent. Hello and welcome to our channel. Today, we are going to tell you about a battle forgotten in history, the First Battle of Dewar. So, let us begin. After ascending to the throne, Akbar gradually mended his relations with most of the Rajput states, with the notable exception of Mewar, which is widely regarded as the most significant state in Rajasthan. The influential Sisodia clan's leader and the Rana of Mewar had refused to submit to the Mughals' requests. As a result of this, Uday Singh II laid siege to Chittorgarh in the year 1568, which led to the Mughals seizing control of a sizable piece of the agricultural land located on the eastern side of Mewar's domain. Rana Pratap, upon succeeding his father as the king of Mewar, received a number of diplomatic embassies from Akbar, who pleaded with the Rajput prince to become his vassal. Akbar dispatched several diplomatic embassies. In addition to Akbar's desire to put an end to this long-running conflict, he had the objective of securing contact with the Gujarat, and doing so by establishing control of the forested and mountainous terrain in the Mewar region. Jalal Khan Kurchi, a favored servant of Akbar, was chosen to serve as the first messenger, but he was unable to accomplish his mission. As a follow-up, Akbar sent Man Singh of Amber, later renamed Jaipur, a fellow Rajput who belonged to the Kachwa clan and whose fortunes had substantially improved during the Mughals' rule. Jaipur would subsequently become Akbar's capital city. However, he was not successful in swaying Pratap's opinion. Raja Bhagwan Das, who came in third on Akbar's list, outperformed his predecessors in every category. Rana Pratap was convinced to the point where he accepted the robe that Akbar had given him and that he should send his little son Amar Singh to the court of the Mughals. Akbar, on the other hand, considered this to be insufficient and insisted that the Rana must submit to him in person. Todar Mal, the final envoy, was sent to Mewar, but he came back without any gifts. After diplomatic attempts were unsuccessful, war was an unavoidable consequence of the situation. In the town of Gogunda, close to Udaipur, Rana Pratap established his base after feeling safe in the rock fortress of Kumbhalgarh. Man Singh, a Kachwa, was sent by Akbar to engage in combat with the Mewar Sisodias, a traditional rival clan. At Mandalgarh, Man Singh established his stronghold, from which he assembled his army and headed towards Gogunda. The village of Kamnor was located about 23 kilometers or 14 miles north of Gogunda, and it was divided from Gogunda by an extension of the Arvali range known as Haldighati because its rocks generated bright yellow sand that looked like turmeric powder when they were crushed. The Rana was waiting for Man Singh and his army at the Haldighati Pass's entrance. The Rana had been informed of Man Singh's movements. The conflict began on June 18, 1576, 3 hours after dawn. According to Mewari tradition, Rana's 20,000 soldiers faced off against Man Singh's 80,000-man army. Janunath Sarkar concurs with the ratio of these figures, but he considers them to be just as overblown as the legend of Rana Pratap's horse Chatak leaping onto Man Singh's war elephant. The Mughal army was 10,000 strong, according to Adunath Sarkar. Satish Chandra calculates that Man Singh's army had between 5,000 and 10,000 soldiers, including both Mughals and Rajputs. The Mughal army's flanks and center were destroyed by Rana's assault. As a result, the Mughals were compelled to flee during the opening stages of the conflict, but they quickly gathered in a location known as Rati Talai, later called Rakht Talai. Additionally, according to Abul Fazl and Banda Uni, this location was near to Kamnur, while Gogunda was the location of the decisive battle. The Mewar army suffered as a result. When the fighting became fierce, Mukhtar Khan disseminated a rumor about the approach of the emperor's army. This boosted the Mughal army's spirit and helped them win the battle. The Mewar lords convinced the Rana to leave the battleground after realizing that the day had been lost. The Mughals mistakenly identified a Jahala chieftain by the name of Man Singh as the Rana when he usurped the Rana's position and wore some of his royal symbols. Despite the fact that Man Singh Jala was ultimately put to death, his gallantry allowed the Rana to safely withdraw. The conflict between the two powers was not resolved by the battle, since Rana Pratap was able to flee successfully. As a result of Akbar's persistent battle against the Rana, Gogunda, Udaipur, and Kumbhalgarh were all soon in his possession. The Mughals put pressure on Rana's supporters and other Rajput chiefs, and he gradually became politically and geographically isolated. After the Battle of Haldighati, Pratap was left with only a third of his original army, and the Mughals were able to take control of Kumbhalgarh, Gogunda, Udaipur, and Chappan. Under these circumstances, Pratap shifted his strategy from open to guerrilla warfare, and he did not allow the Mughals to settle in or retake any of the territories he had previously lost. Akbar himself landed in Mewar in September of 1576 for hunting expeditions in forests, during which he captured Udaipur and its southern region named Wagad, and established Mughal administration in these regions. This was done to subdue Pratap, who was the ruler of Mewar at the time. At that time, Pratap and his family sought refuge in the surrounding hills and were successful in remaining hidden until May of 1577, when Akbar arrived back in Fatehpur Sikri. Only the stronghold of Kumbhalgarh remained to be taken, so Akbar delegated his general Shahbaz Khan to complete the conquest the next year. There were 3 invasions, one in 1577, led by Shahbaz Khan, then another the next year, also led by Shahbaz Khan. Finally, the 3rd invasion came in 1579. This one was also led by Shahbaz Khan. Each of these invasions was successful in occupying cities such as Udaipur, Chawand, Gogunda, and Kumbhalgarh, but they were unable to capture Pratap because he had by that time become a master guerrilla fighter, and he knew each path through the Aravalli hills. This enabled him to hide from Mughal troops each and every time until the Mughals left Mewar. When Pratap was in need of cash, his minister Bama Shah, whose family had held the office for generations, put their collected fortune at Pratap's disposal. This wealth, along with other resources, is said to have been sufficient to maintain an army for a period of 12 years. As a result, the legacy of Bama Shah as the savior of Mewar has been maintained. Pratap was able to organize his new army with the assistance of Bama Shah and plot a large assault on the Dewar fortress, which was guarded by a garrison of fewer than 1,000 men. After 1579, the Mughals' attention went to other regions of the empire, allowing Rana Pratap to regain a significant portion of the lost land in the western areas of his kingdom. The Mughal bastion of Dewar, which was controlled by Mughal officer Sultan Khan, was attacked by Maharana Pratap on September 16, 1582. During the conflict, Amar Singh, who was the son of Maharana Pratap, killed Sultan Khan, and as a result, the Mughal army was compelled to flee and abandon Dewar. 32,000 members of the Mughal army capitulated to Maharana Pratap. The fleeing Mughal forces were pursued all the way to Amet, which Maharana Pratap eventually managed to take control of as well. Almost immediately after that, Kumbhalgarh, later Kumbhalgarh, 36 garrisons or thanas, and 84 other posts were taken, and the defenders were slaughtered. In Udaipur, which had already been abandoned by the retreating Mughal army, Maharana Pratap encountered no opposition there. After winning the Battle of Dewair, Maharana Pratap continued his campaign and, by the year 1586 AD, had retaken the majority of Mewar. Chittor, Ajmer, and Mandalgarh were the only remaining areas in enemy control. James Todd referred to the triumph at Dewar as the Marathon of Mewar, which exemplifies the Maharana's accomplishment as the crowning glory of his reign. Despite the fact that Pratap's reform and consolidation efforts greatly improved the tone of the administration in Mewar and increased the security and safety of the populace, there were still some issues that required quick addressing. All of the peaceful economies that had been built up over the years had been wasted by the protracted war with the Mughals, pushing Mewar to the brink of financial collapse. Long battles with the Mughals had increased the value of the feudal system and stoked the rivalry between Chundawads and Saktawat, the most notable loyal soldiers of the Mewar Empire. When Maharana Pratap passed away in Chavand on January 19, 1597, his eldest son, Maharana Amar Singh, who was the ruler of Mewar, assumed power. Amar Singh was his father's constant companion and his partner in all of his perils and hazards throughout Amar Singh's life. Initiated by his noble paternal ancestor in every act of mountain strife and well-versed in its dangers, he began his career at the height of his manhood, already attended by sons who were able to maintain whatever his sword may regain of his patrimony. He made a solemn oath to lead them to victory in their conflict with the Mughals and to restore their control over Chittorgarh. An encounter with Prince Salim, who had been commanded by the emperor to proceed with the view to subduing Amar Singh, occurred in the year 1599 AD, when the Liana was busy putting his residence in order and making preparations for defense. The prince passed his time ambling around Ajmer and the surrounding area, and he also made a brief stop at Udaipur. However, he spent the majority of his time in the region of Ajmer. His lieutenants, on the other hand, worked tirelessly and successfully established strong outposts at Untala, Mohi, Bagori, Mandal, Mandalgarh, and Chittor, amongst a number of other locations. This more than compensated for his own laziness. However, the Rajputs put up a valiant fight against them. Amar Singh was the one who led the assault on every opposing station. The war proceeded in its typical manner. The Mughals destroyed the Rajputs' farms and homes as retaliation for the Rajputs' pillaging of Balpur and numerous other cities and towns inside the imperial dominion. However, the Rajputs were ultimately driven back by the Mughals. Several thousands of the indigenous people were taken into captivity. The Rajputs were forced to flee into the surrounding hills. However, unexpectedly, the operations were brought to a halt. Interrupted to a quick stop as Rajaman Singh was immediately called to Bengal, and the dissatisfied Selim marched away towards Agra. This brought an abrupt halt to the proceedings. The news that this voyage was a failure caused the emperor a great deal of displeasure, and in the year 1605, he ordered Selim to try the endeavor once more with all of his might. In order for the prince to successfully complete the conquest of Mewar, a sizable army was put at his disposal, and a number of emirs and omras, including Jagannath, Madho Singh, Sadiq Khan, Hashim Khan, Islam Kuli, Sher Beg, Amir Beg, and others were sent to follow him. However, the liturgical prince stubbornly refused to budge from his position. Because of the emperor's illness and subsequent passing, the emperor's plan to send Prince Khusrav and Sagar to lead the war did not come to fruition. All of this would later lead to the second and decisive Battle of Dewar. So that is all the time we had today, folks. I hope you enjoyed this video. Do not forget to subscribe to our channel and do hit the bell icon on your way out. Till then, see ya.